why don't we start and why don't you just tell the students a little bit about yourself and your background, how and where you grew up, and eventually lead us to how it came to be that you came to the Mercer Law School.
Okay, sure. I'm a military brat. My dad was stationed at Robin, so we moved here probably around middle school. Went off to Clark Atlanta for college and came back to Mercer for law school. Knew when I was 9 years old that I wanted to be an attorney. I fell in love with the show, The Cosby Show, and I wanted to be the mom, minus all those kids. That was my first introduction to law. That was my first time seeing a black female attorney, and I was so intrigued by her. That's what I wanted to do, so I stuck to it. And like I said, I came back to Mercer, and when I was here at Mercer, I actually interned with Georgia Legal Services. I think it was my second year, and completely got bit by the bug. As a first year, I came in thinking, you know what, I think I want to be a prosecutor. I want to prosecute crimes against children. That's really what I want to do. So I went down to Houston County and I interned with another one of our alums and found myself leaving work crying every day. It was probably the most stressful time outside of my first year of law school that I had ever experienced, and I quickly realized that was not for me. I interned for about a semester. And when I come back to the law school, I like to talk to people about trying out different things, because you may come in with an idea of what you really want to do, but I don't want you to get pigeonholed into that. I want you to understand that there's so many other opportunities available for you. You should really investigate to make sure that that's going to be a good fit before you go out and take that first job and get somewhere and say, oh my gosh, I'm miserable. So after doing that, I interned with Georgia Legal Services, and I felt like the lights were just shining, saying this is exactly where you're supposed to be. It was that aha moment for me. And I've been there ever since. That's the only job that I've had since I graduated from Mercer Law School. And I'll put in a pitch for the Career Services Office. Every job that I got while I was here at Mercer, I got it through the Career Services Office. Every interview that I went on, I was offered the position, because I picked out what I wanted to do, what I was really passionate about. I didn't just apply to a job just to be applying. I wanted to do something that I thought would make me happy, would give me some type of fulfillment, and that really worked for me.
You know, one thing that's changed since you were here is that we have much more formalized the public interest practicum program, as you know. So I think you have practicum students probably in your office, and so there are lots and lots of opportunities for the students to do the kinds of things that you're talking about. You're coming up on your 10-year anniversary. We were talking before, I'm coming up on 30 years. But looking back on those 10 years, can you talk a little bit about your time in law school and what it was like for you, maybe a little bit of the ups and downs? I think it's fair to say everybody in this room has had some ups and downs already. And it may help them to hear some perspective 10 years out of what it was like to be where they're sitting now.
Honestly, law school itself, my first year, was not pleasurable for me at all. I would find myself sitting in class some days saying, why did I decide to do this? And I see some of the looks on your faces. Some of you have had those questions for yourself. Stick it out. It gets better, I promise you. But seriously, it was a really rough time period for me.
You can project.
Technical difficulties. It was a struggle. But I fought through it. I realized this was something that I really, really wanted to do. And so if it's what you really, really want to do, you have to tough it out. So by the time I made it to my second year, I was like, you know what, this is not so bad. They are working me to death this year, but I get it now. I think my problem with the first year was I didn't understand the process. Hadn't done enough research into law school to really realize what I was getting myself into. I just kind of came in blind and was like, yeah, you know, the lady on the Cosby Show, she's a lawyer, I want to do it too. You know, how hard is that? You know, I was brilliant in undergrad, and you know, I did all these great things and made great grades, so it can't be too much different than that. And lo and behold, it was a totally different world when I got here. But what I found myself doing was second year and third year was getting more involved in the law school process. I was very active with student government. I was very active with the dean's office. I was really active with BALSA on the local and the regional and national levels. And those really helped turn my experiences around. And I took advantage of a lot of things. I got to know Dean Donovan really well. She got to know me well. The Career Services Office got to know me well. So if opportunities came about, they knew me so well that they'd say, wow, Tomieka, I heard about something that I think you'd be great for. Or, can you go and represent the law school here? Can you go do recruiting for us here? Because they knew what I was passionate about and they knew my abilities. And that really made my experience a lot easier for me. And it's led to some lasting relationships. There are people at the law school that call me. I mean, I'm here every year. You'll get sick of seeing me. I get called to come and speak at the law school probably about 5 or 6 times a year, and to go and represent Mercer sometimes, and to just do things because they know who I am and they know that I'm passionate about what it is I do. So I would advise you as first-year students, don't try to go through this thing as an island. I was never one that, did the study group thing or had a study buddy because I didn't need it. I was like, I'm brilliant. I don't need to study with anybody. So I get here and I'm in a class full of other brilliant people who don't need anybody. And, it's intimidating. It was very intimidating for me to look around and, half my classmates, their dad was a lawyer, their granddad was a lawyer, their mom, everybody in their family. And I'm like, wow, there's nobody in my family that's in law. And so you got to get that out of the way. You got to get over yourself and recognize that it's okay to ask for help. And it actually is beneficial for you to get with people that don't think like you so that you can figure out how to bounce things off of each other. I had a hard time trying to see both sides of an issue because, I'm a woman and I think I'm right most of the time, and I usually am. So I couldn't see the other side of the argument. And so it took me getting in a study group with somebody that I really didn't like. He's turned out to be one of my best friends. But I really didn't like him. We didn't think alike. I just thought he was a jerk. He was really arrogant. He was from New York. I'm a good Southern girl. We just didn't click. But he challenged me because he could always see the other argument, and he really challenged me to reach beyond myself and kind of look at things differently. And I would definitely encourage you to find someone like that. He is one of the reasons I know that I passed the bar my first time, because he was in my study group. We had a very small study group of folks that, people around the law school probably were thinking, yeah, they're probably going to bring the curve down. I don't think they're going to make it. But everybody in my study group passed because we were completely opposite, and we challenged each other every day, and we made a pact that we were not going to let one of us fall down. And had I done that my first semester, my first year, I think things would have turned out a lot differently for me as far as how I felt about that first year experience. I don't have warm, fuzzy feelings about first year, but as my law school experience as a whole, I would not have done anything different. I made a great choice coming to this school in this environment and doing the things that I do.
Was there a particular faculty member that had a special influence on you and your life?
There are actually two, and I'm going to talk briefly about the first one because I don't want to get emotional, but Professor Kosick terrified me as a first-year student. But I look back now, even when I go into court and I listen to other attorneys when they present their cases, and I hear the way they speak, and I hear Professor Kosick in my head, and I say, wow, they obviously didn't have Professor Kosick, because he made sure that you could present yourself like an attorney should present themselves. And everyone that's gone through Kosick will tell you the same thing. You know that you've been taught by the best, and it shows when you're in court. And you look at other people and say, no, they didn't go to Mercer, because listen how they're presenting their case. They clearly didn't go to Mercer, and they didn't have Professor Kosick. So I always thank him for that, for pushing you, and he terrified us in class. The whole semester you're sitting there like, oh my gosh, I just cannot believe I'm going to have to speak in front of this man and he's just going to crucify me. The other faculty member that played a tremendous role in my process was Professor Baldwin. I adopted him as my father. I was scared of him the first year because he was really hard and he really challenged you, and you were sitting on pins and needles like, oh my gosh, what is he going to say next? But I just spoke with him last week. We still have a relationship after 10 years. I really depend on him when I have different issues that are coming up, or if there's something that I'm not too sure about, a career choice that I want to make, or an opportunity that's been given to me. I'll call him and say, what do you think about this? What should I do about this? I've definitely adopted him as a mentor, and those type of relationships can only be formed when you allow yourself to be open. At first I was too afraid to go to his office. Your professors say, oh, come talk to me in my office. They're totally different in their office. That's the secret. They may be horrible in class, but when you go and talk to them, and they're real people too, I promise you. And you would do yourself a world of good to take that opportunity. If something's going on, you just don't quite get it, take the time out before it builds and builds and builds and ends up hurting you in the end.
Let's turn to what you do now. And I don't know any way to open this up other than to say, you know, is there a typical day for you, and how would you describe it in Georgia Legal Service?
I love that question. There is no typical day at I don't think any legal services program. I always amaze myself. I'll start the week with a things to do list of, you know, things that I really need to get accomplished this week. I need to work on this answer. I need to do this and this. But the nature of my practice is last minute. Prime example, I would say 95% of my practice is representing victims of domestic violence. And here in Bibb County especially, we have court every Friday with temporary protective order cases. I'm supposed to be there now, but luckily one of my coworkers was able to handle my cases for me. And so we know that we're going to have court pretty much every Friday, just in this one county. My office covers 23 counties, by the way. 5 attorneys, 23 counties, so you do the math. And so I may get a call on Thursday at 2 o'clock from a client that says, I need help. I've got court in the morning. And I'm like, seriously? Okay, let me see what I can do. She can't come into the office because she's at work, and if she asks to get off work 2 days in a row, she's going to be fired. But she needs this protective order because her ex-boyfriend won't stop calling and harassing her, and they have a child together. He's threatening to take the child and run off with the child. He's been physically abusive to her. He sent her to the hospital, and she needs this protective order. I need your help. There's nobody else that can help me do this. So whatever I had planned for that afternoon, it goes by the wayside because now I have to prepare for court at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I've got to stop what I'm doing because it's just that critical. This woman's life depends on whether or not I am prepared properly to handle her case that following morning. So that means I've got to get witnesses contacted. If I have to have a police officer there to testify, I've got 3 hours basically to try to do this during business hours while people are still at work, and I can actually reach them. And that's a typical day for me. Anything can come up. We have clients that walk into our office all the time with different issues. I do a lot of housing eviction work, primarily representing people in public housing. And just this week, I was able to keep 2 people from being evicted from their homes. One was being evicted for failure to pay a maintenance charge of $12. Evicted for $12. And another was being evicted because it was alleged that she hosted a cookout in the public housing area, and a fight broke out and there were problems, and you know they were going to kick her out. So you hear stuff like this and you say, well, wow. When I first started, I'm like, you can't pay a $12 maintenance charge? You got to be kidding me. You don't need your housing. You know, that's me green coming in from law school thinking I know everything. And then you get into the situation and you find out, you know, I was never given a bill for $12. Sure, if I paid my $180 rent, I would certainly pay a $12 maintenance charge, but I never received it. They never gave it to me. So again, I got to stop what I'm doing. I've got to go and negotiate with the housing authority to help this person get their housing saved, because you may not know affordable housing is pretty non-existent in Bibb County. So if you lose the one place that you have and you can only afford to pay $180 rent, where in the world else are you going to get a 2-bedroom place in Macon for $180? It's not going to happen. So that person is going to be potentially homeless if I don't take the time to stop what I'm doing and investigate what's going on. I get the opportunity to come out and speak at the law school. I have developed a teen dating violence project where I go around our 23 counties and I go into high schools and middle schools and I educate parents and teachers and students about the issues of teen dating violence. I train police officers on the issues of domestic violence. I train shelter advocates. What I did in legal services was I found my niche. I knew that domestic violence was something that I loved to talk about, and I'm a good trainer. I have to say that myself. I pat myself on the back. I'm a good trainer. I can come in and teach people stuff in a fun and innovative way that's not putting them to sleep. And so when they recognize that that was my gift, they just send me out and they let me do what I'm good at. And so I tell you, when you get on the job, figure out what it is you're good at and do it to the best of your ability. Then you can do what you love. I can honestly say I love my job. I love what I do. I love coming to work every day. And I have friends that are not in that same position. They dread going into work. Do what you love and do it well, and you'll never work a day in your life.
Can you talk a little bit about the office more generally? You come at 5 lawyers for 23 counties. What other kinds of problems do you and your colleagues work on? How do the clients get to you? And how in the world do you serve 23 counties with just 5 lawyers?
Our office is located in downtown Macon, so a lot of our clients walk into our office. But we serve a very rural area as well in those other 23 counties. So what we do is we go out into the counties and we do what's called circuit riding. We will post announcements to let folks know when we're going to be there and what types of issues we cover. At Legal Services, we do public benefits work, we do some custody work, some divorce work, domestic violence, of course, we do elder law, we do Social Security, we do housing, we do consumer law. When you come into Legal Services, you're going to get a little bit of everything. You're not going to be stuck just doing one particular thing. You're going to have an opportunity to kind of know a little bit and be able to dabble in everything. We do unemployment cases. So typically our clients will walk in or call in. They get referred to us by the clerk's offices in the different counties. Different agencies will refer clients to us. We get a lot of people that come to us when their food stamps have been cut off for whatever reason. 9 times out of 10, DFAX was wrong. I hope there are no former DFAX folks in here. If there are, I don't care. DFAX was wrong, and they should not have been cut off from their benefits, and we tell them why they shouldn't have, and so we're able to get them restored. And how do we serve people? It's very difficult. That's probably the most frustrating part of my job, is we have so many people that come to us that we have to turn away because you physically cannot help. Just one example, on a daily basis, I would dare say we get 50 to 60 calls a day for people who want to get a divorce. We simply can't do it. Our funding restricts us from filing affirmative divorces. There are certain instances when we can get involved in divorces if the person is a victim of domestic violence, and if custody is an issue, then we will consider it. But just that category alone, if we did divorces that come to our office, we wouldn't be able to do anything else for anybody else. And so that's why it's really important we reach out to attorneys in the local community and try to get help from them to do the work that we simply cannot do because of funding cuts. We've just gone through another round of cuts, and our program lost a lot of attorneys because our federal funding has been decreased. We don't get state funding really. So we depend a lot on grants. We have domestic violence grants and elder law grants, and that kind of charges the work that we do, and it kind of limits what we can do as well, because if you don't have a pot of money to pull from, you're a lot less likely to work on those issues if you don't have the funding to cover it.
What happens to the people you turn away?
What we do is we have a list of pro bono attorneys that will agree to take cases from us. We have a pro bono list and a reduced fee referral list. So you have some lawyers that say, well, no, I won't do it for free. But if you send them to us, I'll do it at a reduced rate, less than what I would charge someone who comes in off the street because of my relationship with Georgia Legal Services. And then we have normally new attorneys, freshly minted, that want to come in and learn some different areas of the law and make a name for themselves. And they will be on our listing, and they'll say, listen, I'll take, we normally ask them to take 2 cases a year. It's not a lot. All we're asking is 2 cases. And oftentimes they take more than 2 cases, but we say, give us 2 cases a year, we'll give you some CLE credit, if there are court costs involved, we can help you with the court costs. We just need somebody that can handle this because we don't have the staff to do it. It works pretty well, very well in the Macon area, but when you get out in the counties, and you get out in Dublin and Wrightsville and Soperton, where there may be 1 or 2 attorneys, and those attorneys are so inundated with cases that they're getting paid for, they don't have time to take pro bono cases. So it becomes really difficult when you have people that live in the counties and need help. And then, there are sometimes we just can't help everybody because we can't find an attorney that's willing to take the case.
And those are really the folks I wonder about. I mean, next week, as I've told you, the students are going to be talking about issues of access to justice. They're reading some material on that. We're going to have the simulated Board of Governors meeting, and we're going to debate some proposals. But the way things stand now, if somebody does not get a lawyer for one of the kinds of problems that you're talking about, what happens to them?
They end up representing themselves, which, as you can imagine, oftentimes becomes a train wreck. Because can you imagine a woman going in unrepresented and her husband is trying to take her kids? whether he has a good cause or not. She doesn't know the lingo. She doesn't know how to represent herself. She doesn't have money. And the first thing that the judge is going to tell her is, ma'am, you need to get a lawyer. And she's saying, I can't get a lawyer. He was the one that worked. We've been married 15 years. He never allowed me to work. I have no skills. I have no money outside of what he has, and he's completely cut me off. How can I afford to pay for a lawyer? And so she goes in unrepresented. And if the lawyer on the other side is an unscrupulous lawyer, he's not really going to care about what her issues are because he's not representing her. His goal is going to be to do whatever his client wants him to do. Take the kid, stick it to her, whatever. That's going to be his goal. And where does she stand? She may have a very good case. She may have been a victim of domestic violence, and he's been abusive, but she never called the police, so she has no police reports. She has no background to lay before the court to say, this guy doesn't need these kids. He's been abusive towards them, but I haven't been able to tell anybody because he's always threatened what he would do to me if I did tell. And so now she gets in court, she's unrepresented, and she could possibly lose her kids because she doesn't have a voice for her. And those are the cases that pull at me the hardest, because you want to do more, but you recognize with the caseloads that we have already, we can't do any more, and we can't find anybody. I find myself begging private attorneys. If I go to a new county and I see somebody that I've never seen before, I introduce myself and I say, hey, what kind of law do you practice? You think you'd be interested in helping some of our clients? And sometimes they're looking at me like, hey, just back off. My plate is full as well. But that's just because I'm passionate about trying to help make sure everybody has representation.
Is there one client or one case that you look back on the last 10 years and say, that's one that I'm going to keep with me the rest of my life?
There is one that stands out, and it's not a good case. Well, there are two that stand out that are not good cases. My very first custody case, I lost, and I'm very competitive. I hate to lose, but
so are they.
Oh my gosh, it's like the worst feeling ever, and I just took it to heart, and I cried when I was leaving court. Don't think I'm a punk because I cry all the time, but I cried. Like, I was really hurt that this woman lost custody of her kids, and long story short, there were some things that came up during the trial that she had not shared with me, things that were very damaging to her case, and the judge picked up on them immediately and removed custody of the kids. And I took this to heart for about 2 weeks. I was completely depressed, and I was just so upset. I felt like I had failed her, and I wasn't worth my salt. I just needed to maybe think about a different career choice. And I got a call back from her telling me that her and her husband had gotten back together. And I was like, I've been killing myself for 2 weeks, and y'all are back together. But that happens. I see somebody's looking at me like, are you serious? That's the nature of what we do. You put your heart and your soul into the case, and you get so emotionally tied into it, and they get back together. So that's one of them. Another one was pretty tragic. I represented a victim of domestic violence. Met with her, talked about safety planning, talked about what we could do to keep her and her kids safe. And she just kept telling me, I think this is going to get his attention. I don't think, he's going to do anything else. I just really wanted him to see that I'm serious and I want the abuse to stop. I just want him to leave me alone. And long story short, we were able to get the protective order. He was in jail. He got out of jail, and the same day that he got out of jail, he went to her job and he shot her in the parking lot and killed her. And that always sticks with me because I always look back to see if there was anything else that I could have done differently that could have possibly saved her life. And I took that one to heart, and I think about her every day. Not a day goes by. When I represent these victims, I remember her, and I try to think, is there anything else I should tell her? Is there anything else I should say to her to try and help keep her safe? Sometimes you just can't. You do the best that you do, and at the end of the day, you have to relax in knowing that you've done the best that you could possibly do for your clients.
Yeah. There are limits to what lawyers can do. There may be some students with us this morning who think that they might want to do the kind of thing that you do. What would you say to them at this point in their legal education if they have the inkling that maybe legal services is where they'd like to do that? What advice would you have for them?
I'd recommend that you try and volunteer at a legal services office to get a feel for day-to-day activities and what it is we do. I will tell you, it is the most rewarding work that you will ever find. You know, you go to the big firms and you get rewarded by getting a big paycheck. And that's great. That's fine. There's never anything that I wanted to do, but that's fine if that's what you want to do. I get rewarded in a different way. You know, I may represent a client and help her get guardianship of her grandchildren, and the next day she brings me a cake that she baked. Or I've had another client bring me a plant that she grew in her house, and she's repotted it and she's brought that to me. And, you know, people are like, a cake? You know, a plant? You know, I still have plants that my clients have given me. Those things mean so much to me, and they make it worthwhile because we represent our clients free of charge, of course. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have the means, but to see the appreciation that they have, and think about it. If you've gone through different social services agencies, and everywhere you've gone, you've been told, no, I can't help you. There's nothing that I can do for you. I'm often the last resort for them, and they know that if I can't help them, what in the world are they going to do? And so they're so appreciative of the little things. You know, thank you for helping me keep my apartment. Thank you for helping me get custody of my kids. Thank you for that protective order so that now I can actually sleep at night. That makes it all worthwhile. But it's not for everybody. This work is not. I've seen both ends of the spectrum. We have people that come in and they may stay a year or two and realize, wow, this is totally not for me. Or we have people in our program, in my office in particular, that have been there 20 and 30 years. And so you really need to just kind of go in and volunteer and see if it's something that you could be comfortable doing. We've had interns come in and I say, okay, we got to go to the nursing home and get some documents signed. And they're like, what? I don't do old people. I've had interns tell me this. I don't do old people, so I can't. And I'm like, okay, and you want to work at legal services? I don't think this would be a good fit for you. Or, you know, I've gone into public housing places, and, you know, I've had interns tell me, oh gosh, my boyfriend won't let me go on that side of town. I don't think I can go with you to meet with this client, you know. And I'm like, I don't judge them. That's just your reality. That's fine. If you're not comfortable doing that, then you might want to rethink a career in legal services, because this is what I do. I go into public housing places. You know, I did a manufactured housing project for 2 years down in South Georgia. I was still with the Macon office, but I had to travel to Valdosta and everywhere. And I would go into these mobile homes, and I've seen some things that I don't even want to repeat, like just completely grossed me out, and I was like, why do I do this again? But you have to understand, sometimes you're going to get in situations where you're sitting in a client's house and you see bugs crawling on the wall, and you're just like, if I don't get out of here, I'm going to lose it. But recognize that's their reality. I can't judge her based on that. She still has a legal issue that I have to help her with. And so just figuring out what you can tolerate. If you know you don't do old people, if you know you don't like domestic violence issues, you might want to think about a different type of public service work that doesn't require you to deal with those type cases.
In dealing with other lawyers, I mean, do you find or perceive that the other lawyers treat you differently because you are a legal services lawyer?
It's gotten better, I will say. When I
I'll take
first
that as a
started,
yes.
When I first started, I kind of got the feeling that people felt sorry for me, like, oh, you work at legal services, you know. And I had a friend that graduated with me, and he went off to, the guy that I didn't really like, he went off to a big law firm, and you know, he really felt sorry for me. He was like, I can't believe you do that kind of work, you know. And after about a year, he quit because he hated his job. And he was like, wow, now I see why you do what you do. You're so happy. You're just so. But so I say that to say there will be some lawyers that kind of look at you and say, legal services. But then you have the opposite end of the spectrum, and they come up to you and say, I really thank you for what you do. I thank you for what you add to the profession. Judges are very, very thankful. I've had judges say, wow, I love it when I see a legal services attorney on the other side. And the first time I heard that, I was like, what? You do? And he says, yes, because you all are always prepared. I don't have to wait for you. Your orders are already, they're prepared, they're ready to go. You have your clients prepared. I appreciate you being on the other side of the case. So it's things like that that help you realize that, you know, the money, it's not great. I will say that. It's definitely not great. It's doable, but it's not great. But you do get a reputation for knowing what it is that you do, because you're the expert in the area that you do. The type of stuff that I do, most private attorneys don't really get into. So they come to me. I've had private attorneys call me and say, hey, I got this issue. You know, I'm trying to help a family member with a housing issue. Tell me what you know about this. You know, and I'm just like, wow, you're coming to me for help. That's cool. But you will earn the respect. If you come in as a professional, you know what you're doing, you're on time, and you're ahead of the curve, you'll get the respect that you deserve.
You know, I didn't warn you I was going to ask you this, but it occurred to me as I was listening to you. You know, one of the things that's going to come up from time to time in this course is work-life balance. And the kind of thing you do strikes me as something that would be very emotionally wearing. Obviously time-consuming, time-pressured, just like the life of many lawyers. How do you keep balance in your life? Obviously, you have a life outside your law office. Right? Can you talk a little bit about that and how you manage to be a happy, well-rounded person at the same time you're so absorbed in your practice?
I'm still trying to figure that out.
You and me both.
One of the reasons that I came to legal services was because I said I wanted to have a life. I wanted to have a family. I wanted to leave work at the office and then be able to do all the things that I do. I'm extremely involved in my community. I'm very active with my sorority, with my church. I just do a lot of stuff. And my job affords me the opportunity to do that. I work a 9-to-5 job. I mean, unless I'm preparing for court, I've got a big trial or something that's not routine, I'm generally a 9-to-5 kind of girl. I have a 2-year-old daughter. If she's sick and I need to stay at home with her, that's not a problem. I call in and say, listen, I can't make it today. You don't get that type of flexibility everywhere. If something's going on with my family and I need to be away from the office, I can do that. And my grandmother passed away in the summer. I was gone for a week and a half. Nobody batted an eye. Nobody was looking at me like, what about your billable hours? It's not an issue. If I need to work from home because, I wake up and maybe I'm just not feeling it today, I'm going to work from home today. I have the flexibility to be able to do that. And you just have to kind of go in knowing what it is that's important to you and letting the folks know that you work with what's important to you and that you do have a life outside of the office so that they're not pulling on your time constraints. And that's anywhere you go. You want to let people know. You don't want to say it in an ugly way or be rude, but if you have other obligations, you need to make sure that you don't let those fall by the wayside. By all means, you're going to get your job done, but I think that having a life outside of your job will help you be more effective in the job that you do.
As I mentioned, next week we're talking about issues of access to justice, access to legal services. Let me put you in charge. Right? You get to solve this problem. Right? How would you solve it? I mean, we've got an enormous population out there that is at least underserved, if not completely unserved at all, by lawyers. What should we be doing as lawyers, as a profession, as citizens to deal with that?
I think more law schools need to take the approach that Mercer has taken with regards to public interest and getting you introduced early on to public interest work, showing you what the need is, and encouraging you when you leave here to do some pro bono cases. Whether or not there should be mandatory pro bono work done, there are pros and cons to that. Do I think that every lawyer should do some pro bono services? Absolutely. But the flip side of that is, and I've seen it, if you force an attorney to do something that they're not comfortable doing or they just don't want to do, they may not do a good job and they may actually do a disservice to your client because they're coming in with the mindset, I don't believe this woman, I don't want to be here, I have other things that I want to do, so they're not going to do a good job. But the flip side of that is they may start off saying, this is something that I'm totally not interested in, I don't want to be bothered with this, and then they get that one client that touches them and they say, wow, this is nothing like I imagined it would be. And that may be the spark that they need to help them understand that, you know what, pro bono work is not so bad. I think when I graduated, attorneys were forced, when you got sworn in, you were forced to sign on for the indigent defense list. And as criminal cases came up, you were assigned different cases. Now, I've heard pros and cons from that. People are like, oh my God, I do not want to do that. I don't practice criminal law. I'm not interested, yada, yada, yada. But it was there to fill a need. And sometimes people realize, wow, this is really something that I do enjoy, and they would have never tried had they not been forced to do it. Because the need is so great, I think you have to mandate at some point. I really do think that you would have to mandate attorneys to take pro bono work, and just hope that because of the oath that we take, that they would still do their best job for their clients, but understanding that there may be times that we need to kind of check in on people to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do.
Well, and I promise you, there are people in this room who disagree with that, and we'll have that discussion next week as we debate, among other proposals, the idea of having mandatory pro bono. But I wanted them to hear your perspective on it before they, even before they met with their working groups to talk about it.
And actually, the judges prefer that these folks don't come in here unrepresented, because when you have unrepresented folks on the calendar, it clogs up the calendar. It takes a lot more time for the judge to have to sort through the issues, where if there is an attorney on both sides, the attorneys can help them put the emotions to the side and find some type of resolution, rather than the judge taking 3 hours with some unrepresented folks to try to work through the issues. It could take some attorneys 30 minutes to get that done. And so judges really, really wish that folks had some type of representation to kind of ease their court calendars.
And so does everybody who's in line behind
Absolutely,
those folks.
absolutely.
Well, I want to turn it to the students here momentarily and let them ask you anything they want to ask you. But since you're here, they can't go anywhere. I won't let them. You have a captive audience. Is there anything that you want to say to them that you wish somebody had said to you when you were in their shoes? Anything that you want to tell them, now's your chance.
I will say that the practice of law is nothing like your first year experience. So let's just go ahead and put that out there. If you're not really having a great time right now, I promise you it gets better. You will, if you get in an area that you enjoy, you will have the time of your life, and you will realize what a real difference you can make in people's lives. You all are going to be so powerful. You are going to have the ability to make decisions for people that will affect the rest of their lives. And I think you need to take that seriously. The relationships that you are forging right now, they will carry with you. I think about lawyers that I met in my first year that, maybe were slackers or goofed off, or, they were kind of shady. And when I get people calling me saying, do you have a referral? I'm down in so-and-so area and I need a lawyer. And, I think back and I'm like, oh, I remember, my friend so-and-so was down there. And I'm like, oh no, he was a slacker. I wouldn't refer you. And this is 10 years later. So whatever your reputation is that you form here, it's probably going to carry with you. So you want to think about how you treat people, staff, classmates, your professors. That will definitely carry you a long way, or it can be a hindrance for you, because I can think of 3 people right now that I would never refer anybody to, and I haven't seen them in 10 years, and they may be amazing now, but I just have the memories of, how they were. I tell you, enjoy your law school career. Try out new things. Keep your nose clean, because you don't want anything hindering you from being able to sit for the bar. But I guess the biggest thing is just try out different areas of law, even if it means you have to volunteer with a local attorney for 6 weeks. If that's all you can do, is just go in so that you're not tunnel vision thinking, oh, all I want to do is prosecution, this is it, that's all I've ever talked about, that's all I want to do. I would hate for you to get in that first job at the DA's office and then realize, wow, this is totally not what I thought it was going to be. It would be a great time for you to use this opportunity to broaden your horizons, and it leads to jobs. I volunteered with Legal Services. I did an amazing job, and they hired me. So, my 3rd year, while everybody else was interviewing and, worried about where they were going to work, and I was just coasting, because by October, I knew where I was going to be working. I'd already gotten an offer. So, you go in and you make those relationships now. You help people recognize how great you are at what you do, and then you go out and you do it.
That's great. What questions do you all have for Tomieka about her life, about legal services, her clients? Yes, sir.
In the area of public service, I've read somewhere in the application process for student loans that if you go into public service, after a certain amount of time, a certain amount of your student loan is abated. Can you talk to that? Perhaps does it apply to you, or something you know about it?
That's a great point. I'm really mad about that, because they waited too late to start that program. What it is if you work in public service for 10 years, whatever loans you have remaining after that 10-year time period is wiped away. And I'm at my 10th year now, so I could be sitting pretty had they done that in 2002 when I graduated. So I'm a little miffed by that. But there are lots of repayment programs. I was approved for a repayment program that for 3 years, if I continue doing what I do, they would pay $6,000 a year towards my student loans. And that's just for going to work every day and doing what I do in the public interest field. So when I got the letter saying that I was approved for that, I was ecstatic. That's $18,000 that I'm not going to have to pay back. So there are so many programs with Georgia Legal Services. They have loan repayment. They pay 75% of my monthly loan payment. So like I pay the first $100 and then they pay 75% of the remainder while I work here. So of course I signed up day one, and you know they're paying on my loans. Why not? It's free money. Why wouldn't you take advantage of something like that? And so when people say, oh no, public interest lawyers don't make any money, there are so many perks that we get on the back end, like student loan repayment, that make it a definitely more attractive package for you. You had a question?
Yeah, do you guys do any kind of appellate work at all? Because I mean, I think at least that appellate work really interests me. I mean, you know, I've heard you were talking about, you know, when these people go in without attorneys.
Yes.
Do you ever find yourself in a position where it's like, okay, this person already went in without an attorney and screwed it up, and so now you're on the appellate end trying to fix it?
We don't do a lot of appellate work, but we have done some. A lot of what we do, and I call it triage work, because we have been short-staffed since I got with the program. When I interned, there were 11 attorneys in the Macon office. Since I've been there, we've not had more than 5. So to say we're understaffed is an understatement. So we really don't get many opportunities to go in and do the type of appellate work, but we do. We have an attorney in our office that she loves appellate work, and anytime there's an opportunity that comes up, we kind of shoot it to her. And again, because she developed her niche, that's what she wanted to do, and she let it be known. And guess what? If you love it, go for it. You know, I'm all for you. So yeah, if you make yourself available and you show that you're good at that, we'll make sure you get what you need to do.
I was just wondering if there were, like, I know you said there's CLE credits, but is there any kind of tax write-off you can do for pro bono services? Or?
Now that I don't know. Tax is not one of my favorite classes. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there is a tax benefit that you get from doing pro bono work.
No.
No. Sorry.
Short answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Got one way in the back. Yes, sir.
Is your legal aid office funded by the government, or is it a nonprofit project?
We are a nonprofit 501c3. We do get some federal funding. A major portion of what we had was some IOLTA money that we really depended on heavily, which is
You're gonna have to
basically
tell them.
dried
You're
up.
gonna have to tell them what IOLTA money
I can't do that.
is. Interest on lawyers' trust
Accounts. And basically, there's this big pot of money that we were drawing from that's helping pay for a lot of the wonderful things that we do. Well, the big pot of money is like this now, which has led to funding cuts and us losing attorneys and paralegals and stuff. But it was available at one time.
Is there funding from other large law firms that comes into you, like donations?
Yes, and the Macon community has been tremendous. The local law firms donate to our office. And statewide, we are a statewide law firm. We cover all of the counties except for the metro Atlanta counties, which is handled by Atlanta Legal Aid. So we get funding from large law firms, small law firms, private donations. So we get a little bit of everything from different areas, but I think primarily what we focus on is grants. And we go after grant work to support, or grant funds to support the work that we do.
So if you're saying that Atlanta Legal Services handles Atlanta, do you also go to the upper parts of Northern?
We do.
Okay.
We have, I think, 8 offices around the state, and we just break them down, and each office covers so how many counties in that area. So we cover everything except the metro Atlanta counties. I think there are 5.
You said that you wanted to be a prosecutor for a while, and there indicated it. Could you be more specific on exactly what it is that kind of ruined your experience there?
It was too stressful for me. I really thought that I would enjoy going out and advocating for kids that had been abused, physically and sexually abused, because that was the niche that I thought I wanted. But it was too emotionally draining on me. I am a huge child advocate, love kids, and really, really thought that was going to be it for me. And I got there and I just realized I could not divorce myself from the emotional side of the work. I wasn't able to leave it at the office. I would come home and think about the pictures that I'd seen of the kids that had been abused and the stories that I heard, and I just couldn't. For me, it just didn't work out. So it wasn't anything about the job. The office was great. It was run amazingly. There's some amazing prosecutors down in Houston County. But for me personally, with my personality, it wasn't a good fit.
There are a lot of people who couldn't do what you do,
Right.
So
Right.
the trick is to find your niche. What else? Other questions? Yep. Yes, sir.
How do you handle, you said that you got a lot of calls that you just can't deal with. How do you handle that personally, saying no to people when you know it's their last chance?
It's frustrating. When I have to make the call, we generally will send out a letter, our rejection letter, and we give them some advice on how to proceed pro se, basically. But I like to call my clients and tell them, and I think I'm just glutton for punishment, because when I call this mother and tell her I can't help her in a custody matter, and she starts crying on the phone, well, why can't you help me? There's nobody else that can help me. That's emotionally draining as well. I guess it gets easier with time because I've been doing it for so long, and I understand that there are limitations and there's only so much that I can do, so I definitely don't take it as personally as I did. Does it bother me? Absolutely. And that's why whenever I have an opportunity to meet a new attorney, I go and say, hey, would you consider being on our list? We definitely need your help and we'll support you. That's one of the good things that I didn't say about legal services. We have so many forms and orders and briefs, and we just got a wealth of knowledge in different areas that if we get an attorney that says, hey, I'm willing to do this, but I've never done it before, can you guys help? I was helping an attorney down in Houston County with a divorce. Didn't have the time to do the case from start to finish, but if she'd call me every once in a while and say, I got a question about this, or I need a sample answer, or I need this, or I need that, I'll give her what she needs so that she can then go and run with it and complete the case. But she feels like she got the support that she needed in being able to do it because it was something she'd never done before.
Yes, sir.
Generally speaking, if you could pick one field, which field would you say that the community that you represent is most underrepresented or exposed to the legal system the most, be it custody, housing, divorce, criminal defense?
Family law, for sure. Family law, custody, divorce cases, that is what we get the request for the most. The laws have kind of changed and have put a little bit more of a burden on attorneys when they're doing family law cases. We've got child support worksheets that take a little bit more time, and some of the older lawyers are like, I just don't want to deal with that, or, it's putting more work on me. I'm going to raise my fees because, maybe that'll kind of turn some folks away, or maybe they'll realize it's going to take more work, so I've got to charge you more. But by far, that is the most underrepresented area. And that's the toughest one. You got folks fighting over custody of their kids. That's the hardest one. And that's when clients need representation the most, because there are some real issues. When you talk about division of property, that's stuff. People can get over that. Okay, so I don't get to keep the car. I'll eventually get over that. But if you're telling me I'm going to lose my daughter, that could really, really, really affect me. And that's when I think attorneys need to step up and say, listen, I'm not going to let this happen. I'm going to step in and see what I can do to help.
With custody cases, how do you balance the interest of your client and the best interest of the child in those situations?
That's a good question. Oftentimes a guardian ad litem will be appointed to the case to make sure that no matter what happens in this process, that child's interests are going to be concerned. And they're going to be addressed, and they're going to be brought before the court. And it's a really fine line. You have to tell your client, I do work for you, and I'm willing to do what's best for you, but I'm a mother also. So I'm also thinking about this kid. So if I have a client that has a drug problem that I know about, I'm really going to try to encourage her to get herself together before she really wants to make a big push to get her kid. You know, and just, I think a lot of who you are personally comes into what you do in the practice of law, and you just have, it's a fine balance that you work, and every case is different, and you'll just have to look at it and figure out, okay, you know I'm representing you, and I know these are your interests. These are some issues that I think we need to address before we move any further with going down this road that you've planned out. And oftentimes they may come in with one goal, but when you lay it out and you explain to them, okay, these are some of the issues that the court's going to raise. This is going to be a concern with some of the judges. Let's talk about these. No one has ever laid it out to them like that before, and so they're like, wow, that does make sense. Maybe I should go into rehab and get myself together and then push to get my kids back so that, by then I'll have a house, because right now I'm living in my car, I don't have a job, and I have a drug problem. The likelihood of the judge giving you your kids right now, slim to none. And let's talk about ways that we can help you. So I don't only handle the criminal or the case, the civil case. Now I'm going in and I'm contacting River Edge and I'm saying, what programs do you have available for my client? I have a homeless person, she's drug addicted, what can we do? So I'm making calls that, most lawyers are not going to get into that. If you're being paid by the hour, you're probably not going to go in and dig that deep. But I like to take a holistic approach to my practice, and I recognize that her only issue is not this custody case. I need to figure out how she's going to eat tonight. I need to figure out where she's going to lay her head, and I need to figure out how she's going to be able to get clean. And so then I start down that track of figuring those things out. And when I first started, my mom really had to pull me to the side. She was like, you're going too far. I had a client that came in and she said she hadn't eaten in 2 days. And I was like, oh my gosh, you haven't had anything to eat. So I'm like freaking out. This is my first or second year of practice. So I put her in my car and we go to the grocery store, and I'm just like, just get what you need. I want to make sure that you have food. And my boss is like, you did what? And I was like, well, she was hungry. I went and bought her some groceries. But that's just who I am. That's just what I do. And so he pulls me to the side and said, well, there's loaves and fishes. They would have given her 2 boxes of food for free, and they would have done this, and there are these. I was like, really? So you learn as you go on. I don't take folks on shopping trips at the grocery store anymore.
We hear a lot that law school is nothing like practice, and nothing makes us feel very overwhelmed, because here we're struggling and working really hard to do well in law school. Mm-hmm. What about law school is most like practice, so that we can maybe focus in and work on those elements?
Doesn't mean it's unnecessary.
No, it's absolutely necessary. Law school is training you how to think like a lawyer. It's training you to do those critical assessments that you need. It's training you on how to write properly, because as a lawyer, you're going to do a lot of legal drafting. And you've got to learn those skills now. You've got to learn time management. You've got to learn how to present yourself. You may think that your professors are being hard when they close the door at the start time for their class and tell you that you can't come in because you're late. Well, guess what? You go to court and the calendar is set for 9 o'clock. I've had judges that have seen lawyers walk in at 9:01 and they'll say, counselor, your case is dismissed. Your client's case is dismissed. You're late. So now your client's looking at you like, seriously? My case is dismissed because you're late? So you think that what happens in this building is not going to affect you in the practice, but it absolutely does. You need to learn these habits now, because you are going to have some judges that are not going to have any sympathy, on you. Oh, your car wouldn't start, you're this, you're that. I don't care. You're not here. You're late. I don't want to hear from you. So there are lots of things that you take from here. I recommend you take the practical courses in your 3rd year. Unfortunately, they don't come until your 3rd year. That's most like the practice. You'll get to learn how to draft documents. You'll get to do trial practice so that you can actually see it done. But again, if you want to do some of the things that you'll be doing as a lawyer, as a law student, we have law students in our office that practice under the 3rd Year Practice Act. We've got one in court this morning handling a temporary protective order case. How attractive does that make you when you go out and you're starting to look for a job, that you can tell your future employer, oh, I've already handled, 5 temporary protective order cases. I've handled 6 administrative hearings, and they were all favorable decisions. That really makes you ready for the practice. I think you had a question.
Got time for one more.
I would say, what is the
what does a career in public interest look like? You know, like, do you kind of stay in one office? Is there like mobility? Like what does it look like in public interest, and especially like with what you do?
Within our program, you would have to stay at an office for 2 years before you have the opportunity to transfer to another office. Generally, folks stay where they start. I've been in the Macon office. I have no desire to move to another office. And you just kind of work your way up in the ranks. I started out as a law assistant, and then I was a staff attorney, and then I was the senior staff attorney, and now I'm a supervising attorney. I've had the opportunity to do the special project where I worked on the manufactured homes for 2 years. And I'll be honest with you, the reason that I did that was I was really getting burned out with the domestic violence work that I do. Because people realize that's my niche and I'm good at it, they were really funneling a lot more of those cases to me. That's one thing I warn you, when you show people that you're good, they're going to make you prove what you do. And I really, really started getting burned out. And I was at the point where I was saying, wow, either I'm going to leave legal services altogether or I have to do something different because this emotionally is wearing on me. Can't do it anymore. And my program was flexible enough that I was able to go to my boss and say, listen, what else can I do? I'm really not feeling this right now. And so I did that. I took my 2-year hiatus. It really made me appreciate what I do. God knows I never want to work with mobile homes again. But it gave me an opportunity to kind of refresh, recharge my batteries, and I came back with more fire than I ever had. And like I said, I've started this teen dating violence project that at first the powers that be were not real sure about, and they were like, I don't really know, is that really legal? What benefit do we get from that? And it's garnered so much attention, so much so that I just had the opportunity on Wednesday to participate in my first ever nationwide webinar on teen dating violence, because somebody somewhere told the powers that be that I was an expert in this area. So again, I'm making myself known for doing something that I absolutely love, and it doesn't get any better than that. So you kind of work your way up. We used to have, when we had funding, we had this great program every year called Legal Services University, where we would come together and you just basically had like a 3-day CLE on all the areas of law that we cover. And I learned more in those 3 days than you could learn in a year practicing at a regular law firm. But we don't have funding to do that anymore, so I've got to go out and create CLE opportunities for myself. But it is a rewarding career. If this is something that you're thinking about, investigate it, see if it fits with your personality. And if you think you could see yourself as a legal services lawyer, I promise you, you will really love what you do and you will be appreciated for it.
Tomieka, this has been delightful. Join me in thanking